There was a time when the word mobile phone meant one thing: Nokia. Its ringtone echoed through classrooms, offices, and battlefields. It was the sound of connection, of power, of innovation. By the year 2000, 2 out of every 5 phones on the planet carried the Nokia logo. The company didn't just make phones, it defined what phones were. From the icy forests of Finland, a quiet empire rose, one that would one day dominate the communication of humankind. But what happens when an empire starts to believe it can never fall? Long before it made electronics, Nokia was just a paper mill on the banks of the Nokian Virta River. Founded in 1865, it made pulp and rubber, not microchips. But over time, it adapted. It evolved. It merged with cable and electronics companies, laying the foundation for a future no one could predict. By the 1960s, Nokia was making telecommunication equipment. By the 1980s, it was building some of the world's earliest cell phones. Heavy, brick-like devices that could only make calls, but they represented something new: freedom. And by the 1990s, Nokia was unstoppable. When the rest of the world was still discovering what mobile even meant, Nokia had already mastered it. It focused on simplicity, phones that just worked, battery life that lasted for days, designs that fit perfectly in your hand. And it was that simplicity, that belief that a good phone should last forever, that would one day become its biggest weakness. In 1992, Nokia made a decision that changed everything. It bet its future entirely on mobile phones, selling off all other divisions. That move, considered risky at the time, turned out to be genius. By the late 1990s, Nokia was growing faster than any tech company on Earth. Its Model 3310 became an icon. Durable, playful, indestructible. People dropped it from balconies, drowned it in rivers, and it still survived. It became a meme before memes even existed. But Nokia's success wasn't just about hardware. It built a brand, a feeling. Owning a Nokia meant reliability, the same way people trusted Toyota or Rolex. By 2003, Nokia controlled more than 40% of the global phone market. To put that in perspective, imagine Apple, Samsung, and Huawei combined today. That was Nokia. It had thousands of engineers, billion-dollar research facilities, and some of the smartest people in tech. Inside its headquarters in Espoo, Finland, executives believed they were shaping the future of communication, and in many ways they were. But in that same building, something else was growing, something invisible, a quiet sense of pride. And pride, history tells us, is the beginning of every downfall. By the early 2000s, a subtle arrogance began to spread inside Nokia. Its leaders looked at the competition, Motorola, Siemens, Ericsson, and saw no real threat. They believed their dominance was permanent. They believed that design, battery life, and hardware strength were all that mattered. Meanwhile, deep inside Nokia's R&D labs, a few engineers were warning management about a coming storm. They saw what was happening in Silicon Valley, the rise of the internet, the growing power of software. They proposed a radical idea, greater than we should build a phone that works like a computer, one with a touch screen, real internet, and apps. But management refused. They laughed. One executive famously said, "Touch screens will never work. People like buttons. Real phones have keys." That statement would become symbolic of Nokia's arrogance. Inside those words was a dangerous belief that the past success guaranteed future success. It's the same mistake Kodak made with digital cameras, or Blockbuster with streaming. Nokia was the next in line. The company's internal culture became bureaucratic. Meetings piled up, decisions were slow. Innovation was stifled under layers of management. Nokia's engineers built prototypes of smartphones years before the iPhone. But those devices never reached the market. Why? Because executives didn't believe people wanted them. And while Nokia debated, the world changed. In 2004, a small Canadian company released a strange device called the BlackBerry. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't fun, but it could send and receive emails. Business people loved it. Nokia noticed, but didn't take it seriously. Their response was half-hearted. They believed that as long as their phones looked good and worked reliably, they didn't need to chase trends. Around the same time, a small team at Apple began secretly working on a project called Purple. Steve Jobs wanted a phone that could do what a computer could, without buttons, without complexity. When news of this leaked, Nokia's executives dismissed it. One senior manager allegedly said, "Apple? They make computers. They don't understand mobile networks." He was right. Apple didn't understand networks, but they understood people, and in the end, that was all that mattered. In 2006, Nokia released the N95, a phone with an incredible camera, GPS, music player, and 3G internet. It was, on paper, revolutionary, but there was one problem: software. The N95 ran on Symbian OS, an outdated, clunky system that felt slow and unintuitive. It was built for old phones, not for the new touchscreen era that was about to begin. Nokia's engineers knew it. They begged management to modernize the system. Management said no. Instead of reinventing, Nokia tried to patch Symbian, layer after layer, until it became a confusing mess. It was a digital Frankenstein, powerful but painfully outdated. And just 1 year later, in January 2007, Steve Jobs walked onto a stage in California and changed the world. After the iPhone's launch in 2007, Nokia's empire began to feel cracks forming. Executives called emergency meetings. Strategies were debated, but the company that once moved swiftly to dominate markets now moved slowly, cautiously, and fearfully. Greater than, "We'll wait and see," some managers said. "Our phones are perfect," others insisted. "The market will come to us," said the more arrogant voices. By the time Nokia attempted to respond, Apple had already set a new standard. Consumers wanted sleek touchscreen devices with intuitive software. They wanted apps, music, and the internet, all in one place, things that Symbian could barely support. Nokia tried to innovate on Symbian, releasing updates and new models, but the system was ancient, clunky, hard to develop for, and slow. Even Nokia's own engineers admitted defeat. Meanwhile, competitors were evolving faster. Apple had the premium crowd. Samsung was climbing with Android. BlackBerry owned the corporate world, for now. Nokia, the former king, was now chasing shadows. It wasn't leading the race anymore, it was reacting to it. And when a leader starts reacting instead of leading, it's already too late. By 2008, the numbers told a brutal truth. Nokia's market share was collapsing. Every quarter, it lost millions of customers to Apple and Android. The boardroom atmosphere turned cold. Executives blamed engineers. Engineers blamed management. Analysts blamed arrogance. But the truth, Nokia was a victim of its own pride. The company that once preached innovation had stopped listening. It thought its brand was invincible. That hardware mattered more than experience. That customers would always choose Nokia because they always had. But people don't buy the past. They buy the future. Inside Nokia's walls, chaos ruled. Prototypes were built and scrapped. Budgets were cut. Teams argued over direction. They had powerful hardware. Phones, like the N97 and N9, looked beautiful, but the software was painfully behind. Developers hated coding for Symbian. App stores were barren, and consumers moved on. Even when Nokia finally tried to catch up, it was too late. Apple had redefined what a phone was. Android had given the world options. And Nokia, once the pioneer, had become a relic. Its leadership changed again and again. Each CEO promised a turnaround. Each one failed. By 2011, the empire that had ruled 50% of the world's phone market was collapsing, a kingdom of technology, brought down by its own arrogance. By 2013, the writing was on the wall. Nokia had no path to recovery. Its phones weren't selling. Its software had fallen behind. And its brand, once the pride of Finland, was fading into history. That year, Nokia sold its entire mobile phone division to Microsoft for $7.2 billion. To the world, it seemed like a business move. But for those who remembered Nokia's glory days, It was a funeral. At its peak, Nokia earned over $50 billion a year. It sold phones to half the planet. It was a national symbol. Now, it was gone. A fallen empire, traded away in a deal that shocked the world. Factories closed, thousands lost their jobs, headquarters emptied, and the Nokia ringtone, once the heartbeat of an era, fell silent. But make no mistake, Nokia didn't die because Apple was smarter, or because Android was stronger. It died because Nokia refused to change, because arrogance blinded its vision, because pride silenced innovation, because it believed it could never lose. And when you believe you can never lose, you've already started to. History has seen this story before. Kodak, Blockbuster, Yahoo, and now Nokia. Every empire that thought it was eternal eventually falls. Nokia teaches us 3 timeless lessons. 1. No empire is invincible. Even the most powerful can crumble when it stops evolving. 2. Listen to your innovators. Sometimes the quietest engineers see the future more clearly than the loudest executives. 3. Adapt or perish. Because the world never waits for anyone. Nokia's fall wasn't about failure. It was about fear. The fear of breaking what already worked. The fear of changing too fast, the fear of losing control. But in technology and in life, fear is the first step toward extinction. The empire didn't collapse overnight. It crumbled one missed decision at a time, one ignored warning after another, and in the end, the company that once connected the world failed to connect to the future. When Microsoft took control of Nokia's mobile division, the world hoped for a miracle. The Lumia series was born, bold, colorful, and unique. Windows Phone was sleek, fluid, and different. But different wasn't enough. Developers ignored the platform. Consumers stayed loyal to Android and iPhone, and the once mighty Nokia became a silent brand on someone else's product. The partnership failed. By 2016, Microsoft wrote off the entire deal as a loss. The Nokia name vanished from stores, and what was left of the company returned to making network equipment, not phones. The same company that defined the mobile era was now gone from it. It was a heartbreaking irony. The brand that connected billions had disconnected from the future it helped create. And yet, even in failure, Nokia remained respected, not as a company that lost, but as a legend that once ruled everything. Today, when you hold your smartphone, you're holding a piece of Nokia's legacy, the durability, the innovation, the design philosophy that technology should be for everyone. Those values didn't vanish. They evolved through other companies, other engineers, other dreams. Many of the people who built Nokia's empire went on to shape the future of mobile technology itself. Some joined Google, some joined Apple, some started their own companies. All of them carried one lesson. Never get comfortable at the top, because technology doesn't respect history. It only respects evolution, and that's what makes Nokia's story so hauntingly beautiful. It's not just a story of failure, it's a story of transformation. In 2017, a familiar logo quietly returned. A new company, HMD Global, brought Nokia phones back, running Android this time. And for a moment, nostalgia struck the world. Old users smiled seeing the name again. The tone of that classic ringtone felt like a voice from the past whispering, "Remember me?" The new Nokias were solid, practical, and affordable, just like the old days. But the world had moved on. The new era belonged to Apple, Samsung, and the rising Chinese brands. Nokia's return was humble, not as a king, but as a survivor, a quiet reminder that even fallen giants can rise again, if they learn from their mistakes. Every rise has a fall, and every fall leaves behind a lesson. Nokia's story isn't just about business. It's about human nature. When we succeed, we stop listening, we stop questioning, we start believing we're untouchable. But the moment you stop evolving, the world evolves without you. That's the tragedy of Nokia, and the warning it leaves behind for every empire, every CEO, every dreamer. Success isn't permanent. Comfort is the enemy, and arrogance is the beginning of the end. In the end, Nokia didn't die from competition. It died from its own reflection, from believing it was too great to fall. And perhaps that's the greatest irony of all. The company that once connected the world failed to stay connected to itself. Today, the name Nokia still exists, not as a titan of phones, but as a quiet giant in telecommunications. It builds 5G networks. It connects cities. It still innovates, just in a different way. The empire may have fallen, but the spirit that built it still echoes in the world's technology. And maybe that's the real legacy of Nokia. Not how it died, but how it taught us why we must never stop changing.